Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indian Debating League. Today, with me, we have two debaters from India who have made us all very, very proud in the most recent World Championships at the university level. Both of these debaters have not just broken into the final rounds, they broke in the open category as top seed teams. Now, generally, in an interview with the Indian Debating League, you will see me ramble on about the achievements of these individuals and the kind of things that they have to back themselves. But I feel when we have two prolific speakers in front of us who can perhaps outrank me in at least introducing themselves and going into the kind of various achievements they've done and what they are most proud of, perhaps I should give the mic to them. So, with that, firstly, I introduce Dhruv Singh, which he likes to be called KD, and Sahed to the stage. Thank you for being here. And I'd love to know, amongst, before we go into all your achievements and all these debating accolades and professional accolades, what would you all like to introduce yourselves as to the audience, like apart from all this, like personally?
Dhruv, why don't
Yep.
you take
Dhruv?
that?
Okay, so my name's Dhruv. I've done my undergraduate from Shahid Bhagat Singh College, BCom honors. The achievement that I'm probably most proud about is going to be winning the Mukmem in the domestic leagues, in the domestic championships. But on the international stage, it's probably like ESL champion Australs and Open Octa finalist Worlds. So I think these three achievements are probably the ones that I'm the most proud of overall. But yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sahed. Same college, same course as Dhruv. We were like college mates, also classmates for a couple of semesters. But I think beyond debate, my passions lie elsewhere as well. I am just a out and out theater enthusiast. So most of my speeches are just a reflection of the dramas I do in general. So that's why I'm mostly known as the person who's probably going to be the most emotional and most dramatized versions of my speeches are there, whichever you can find online. But yeah, that's something which I resonate with the most apart from debate. And of course, the recent achievement is something I'm probably the most proud of apart from everything else. And yeah, that's about it.
Fair enough. Something which I can tell right away is that, Dhruv, you like theatre, I like theatre. I can say this because so in my debating career as well, whenever I went, people used to sort of, so one of the only tactics I think the other teams had, especially in the beginning rounds when they were getting to know me, was to say in the sort of whip speech that the other speaker was using rhetoric. It's not as serious as it makes it seem. There's so much, and I think it was a lot of fun to go down that route and using dramatization to bring a flair to your speech. So I'm sure there's a lot we can discuss in that realm. Something I noticed, with KD, is you mentioned your most sort of proud achievement when it comes to the international scale starts with ESL Austral champions, right? I'd like to know why does that trump over going for WUDC, especially an open break, right, of this kind. What is something that makes you say that that's a better achievement for you in your eyes?
I think just to be clear, in terms of the better achievement, it's probably World's Open Octa finalist. But obviously, like the first majors that you go for offline just means a lot to you in general. Our experience was very good. We even like went for a vacation afterwards to Bali, so that was a good experience as well. But yeah, I think Octa finals just means more overall in terms of prestige. But in terms of personal experiences, Austral's right up there. Like we had a really good time, just first majors. So definitely a very good experience.
Are you all planning to go back, by the way, to another worlds, or are you all hanging your boots?
So this is the question you should ask Sehej because I'm interested in doing Ottawa Worlds, but it's up to Sehej if you're going to or if you're not going to. But yeah,
But I think this is the probably the best way to announce it, right? Because if I say I'm retired here, then it's very difficult for Dhruv to convince me after this because it's public then. But yeah,
In
I
which
mean,
case, I pull back my question. I'll let you all discuss that amongst yourselves. We'd like to see you both together again. But yes, go on.
no, but I think I don't mind announcing it here as well. I think I am officially retired as a speaker, at least for definitely for majors. And I think this is my official rejection to Dhruv's offer for Ottawa. But I mean, that was my initial plan before going to Sofia as well. And me and Dhruv had spoken about this briefly. We didn't want to speak about it too much and put that pressure that this is our last word, first and last together or something. But yet, it was always in my mind that I want to do words this year because it's possibly the last opportunity for me to do it. And beyond this, I mean, I would love to give it another couple of years, but just the things which I want to do in life beyond this require me to first disconnect completely from the activity, which is pretty difficult to be very honest. But I think, yeah, it was. I've been debating since quite a long time, so this is not like a very easy thing to completely let go of. But definitely, I think speaking wise, I'm probably done. I might show up in other avenues just for free trips, which I may be able to get now. But yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, definitely, and I think we'll edit that out. Don't worry, Dhruv. There's no record of all this. ये सब हमें में है, कोई tension नहीं है. But jokes aside, I would love to know now. We've come back. You've started. You debated for a lot of time, is what you're saying. So, what was your journey like? When did you start debating? When was the first instance you realized, okay, what I'm doing with my words right now, whatever I'm doing with my voice right now, is called an argument, and there's a structured way to do it, and there's an unstructured way to do it, and then you sort of dive into the way which is structured. So, what was that moment like for you in your life?
I think I started debating when I was in fifth grade. I used to be that kid in class who used to love being on stage, whether it's doing theater, dancing, which I did not know how to do, or whether it's debate. But there was this one teacher who told me that, you love to speak, so why don't you do something like a debate? And I had no idea what that means. I just knew it means getting on stage.
Yeah,
So I started doing those classic declamations and, prepared speeches and all those competitions. And I think ever since then, I've not gone a year, or maybe a year is too much as well. I've gone 6 months since fifth grade till now where I've not debated. But actually getting to know what debate meant was in college. Because when I got into college and I got to know parliamentary debating, AP and BP, I was kind of shocked because I was like, okay, what do you
yeah,
mean we don't get prep time or we don't get internet? Because I just knew how to give speeches. I didn't know how to do all this prep nonsense. But yeah, that's the first thing I was introduced to that. And I mean, ever since then, college debating became everything. Now I look back at my school debating and laugh about it because that sounds pretty easy now. But yeah, college debating is something that came to me as soon as I joined college, joined DevSoc. Ever since then, I've just been debating in college, and ever since then. So, yeah.
I see what you mean. And what was that like for you, KD?
Yeah, so honestly, for me, I just didn't have a debating background at all, like in school. So just the transition in terms of public speaking was not that easy for me. Like in the first year of college was when I actually began public speaking and debating for the first time. And especially the first 6 months and the first year was specifically tough because I just didn't have a lot of confidence when I was speaking. So I think it took a lot of time to build that confidence up, and I'm still working towards it. But yeah, definitely, like from someone who just didn't have any experience in school, like from schooling days, it wasn't a very easy journey, especially at the start. So, and I think this is something that I can just tell every single student, even if you just don't have any experience at all in your school days, you didn't do MUNs, that's perfectly fine. I'm a living experience that you don't require that sort of experience. You can still develop as a parliamentary speaker, especially because rhetoric is good, but the matter that you have and the arguments and the quality of those arguments just matters the most in parliamentary debating. So the scope to grow is very, very large, and rhetoric is something that you can just develop with time. So yeah.
100%. And I would like for Sahed to perhaps rebuttal that if you think rhetoric is more important given you like dramatization. But what are your thoughts, like Sahed, when it comes to like debate in general? How do you sort of position yourself? Because you're somebody who likes dramatization, who likes that emotional angle. How has that served you? Because of course Dhruv is coming in, somebody who's not sort of had a public speaking background, had an MUN background, and
Yeah.
he likes the fact that although public speaking also came like a new thing to him, he could realize that okay, I can focus in on the logic first, build
Yeah.
my confidence up from there, and then sort of dive into this whole jargon of okay, the words you use and this and that and the other.
Yeah.
But you're somebody who's coming from the angle of giving a speech and then
Yeah.
thinking about the logic. If it sounds good, it's great. Is where you've come from first, right?
Yeah.
So, what is that like for you? What are your opinions right now about that?
Honestly, initially when I started debating, that was the biggest clash in my mind. I was like, what is going on? Why are people not? I mean, I saw people who were also giving speeches very passionately, but in the average scheme of things, I was like, this is so like robotic in more a sense, but very, very smart. I mean, like much smarter than I was. There were people who were reading much more than I was. People knew a lot more. So I think that's why, similar to Dhruv, even I struggled quite a lot initially, which was kind of a surprise to me, if I have to be honest, because I almost expected that, of course, it'll be a challenge because it's a newer scale. I expected that some things will just remain very easy, and they did not. I mean, it was completely different. So the most difficult thing was to unlearn everything, basically let go of my dramatization for some time at least, get absorbed into this logic, try to build up arguments and focusing on that. So I think that's also my flip of the advice which Dhruv gave, right? Of course, it's good for people to come in and as completely as fresh, and don't be bothered about that. But also for people who've been debating for quite some time in school, you also have to forget that. Like, it honestly does not matter. It might help in the longer run, but it was the first couple of months I realized I just had to unlearn a lot of stuff before I could absorb all of these things. But about rhetorics, I mean, this was, I think, the biggest difference initially because after a point of time when I started learning the logic, etc., I wanted to bring that back again. So that's exactly why in APs I used to love going reply. Like if I was doing any cross team, I was that I was ready to go let go of any other speaker role but reply. So that used to be my opportunity where 4 minutes logic can slightly take a backseat and let me emotionally convince you as a speaker.
Yeah.
And I think in general, I mean, I've discussed it with Dhruv as well. I think rhetoric has slightly gone down. I feel the value it's given in the circuit. People start, using, as you said, that oh, you're a rhetorical speaker. It's almost given slightly a negative connotation. I'm not sure why, but I mean, we have seen a lot of speakers who we have seen on YouTube and used to follow who are very, very good rhetorically, and I used to love seeing them. So yeah, I tried to strike a balance between the two, which eventually I think Dhruv also figured out. Yeah, I'm
A
learning that
thousand,
was.
1,000%. Like one of the things which was a game changer for me when I was sort of growing up and getting into debate or what, because any activity particularly was like we always ask the question, how can we learn a lot faster? Let's say like, people who learn a lot is what we think is like knowledgeable ways. But I learned that the people who can learn, unlearn, and learn again fast are the ones who are generally more intelligent. And I think that's exactly what you have to apply with debate, which is sort of a great sort of asset for you in the long run as well. And on the second part, this has been a criticism of mine as well for like, the debating circuit globally right now, that we've gone so far, I think, into the logical sort of extensions that the way we judge a debate is the average reasonable voter. But the reality is
Yeah.
the average reasonable voter would never listen to this shit. If I have to put it very bluntly, like you've got to make it interesting. I think without making it something interesting, I think the logic fails. So uh, I'm waiting for the balance to come back essentially, where logic is given the front seat, but the driver of that logic is essentially going to be the way you say it out loud and ensure people listen to you, right? But I would say there's logic is probably better or more important than rhetoric still. So if I had to choose only one, I'd go logical. So
Yeah.
That's true.
perfectly. But yeah, okay. Going into now, both of you all had different beginnings in debate, right? But of course, debate is something which is very competitive, and I think it's uniquely competitive when I think of it as a sport. Like the idea of being the best, or forget being the best. This is the one sport where if you get it right, you say you're always right. It's Mr. Always Right. That's the title everybody's fighting for, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that requires a bit of pride, particularly, or a sense of ego, which you can maybe detach yourself from when you're not debating. But it comes alive when you're debating. It's a little outlet to let it go out. So, number one, I'd like to ask you all, what does that look like for you? What is that driver, whether it be ego taking the front seat sometimes, like, I just can't let this lose, or is it being stubborn? And does it come from another area of your life? Because for Sahed, for example, it could be maybe your public speaking competitions or something of that nature, right? Or KD, maybe you have another sport you've played or another something else you used to do, and you got that perfect outlet when you came into college. Perhaps we can have KD first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so initially in my school days, I was really into cricket. So I used to play cricket a lot, and that was a major driving force for just that competitive spirit for me. So I think that in terms of an outlet is definitely true. I definitely agree that for you to do well in debating or for you to just be very, very confident, there is some amount of like some degree of ego which is definitely involved. But that also comes with the negative repercussions as well. Whenever you lose a particular round, you tend to take it very, very hard. So I think that's something which is very, very common in the debate sport, where the highs are very high, but the lows are also very low. I think one thing that's also very specific to the debating tournament or the format in general is that I've been in the circuit for more than 4 years, but regardless of that, you don't get desensitized to the losses that you have taken, regardless of the tournament that you're going into or the scale of the tournament. It could be a very credible tournament, it could just be a domestic small tournament, but the losses still hit like very, very like badly, and the wins also matter a lot. So I think that's something that also keeps me addicted to this format. It's just that I don't get desensitized to the emotions that I feel, but I think competition is definitely a large part of it. I think I'm a very competitive person, and I think this is a very good outlet for me to just drive that competitiveness out. So yeah.
1,000%. Sahed?
I mean, yeah, a lot of things are similar, but I think one thing for me was that I think I always required something where I can say, this is where I excel in, or this is where probably, um, my parents can come and tell me, this is what my son does. That typical conversation happening with other parents. So I think academics for me was never that. I mean, I was reasonably okay and I was doing well in academic, but I never wanted to stand out there. I was perfectly okay with coming third or fourth in class, but being on stage in any activity, I wanted to be the first there. So debate became a good thing competitively because you can't really. I was not able to compete in theater. Or I was not able to compete in like other formats on stage. So debate gave me that drive that what, maybe if I can come first in this every single year in school, that's how I'll probably differentiate myself. So that became a probably an area which gave me a lot of confidence because I think in other
Yeah.
areas I was not that confident. I was trying to build it up. Debate just became that avenue where I could be like, this is my area. This is where I want to feel like I belong. So debate became that, and I continued that for quite some time. So
I
yeah,
think you're perfectly. It's perfectly true, and more than that, I've realized debate gives you a sense of self stronger than other identities, because it's almost like you can defend that identity in your own brain because of the skills you've gotten through debate. So even if you have a low day, yes, of course, you're desensitized, but there's this
yeah,
superiority area to it where others aren't debating. Who are you to tell me what I've lost about, right? And I think there's a it's a beautiful circle you enter, whether it be toxic or not is a debate for another day. But I feel as you grow into the circuit and you sort of learn and lose and so on and so forth, you become when to switch off that feeling, particularly at least at some point. Uh, Fair enough. And I think the idea that, of course, KD spoke about that now he used to play cricket, right? And it's something is uniquely such about debate that you never get desensitized, regardless of whether it's a small tournament or a big tournament. I like to know what you all think about the fact. Like, firstly, I would like to know what kind of theme of a debate you all prefer the most. So, like, do you all like abstract motions? Do you guys like IR motions, or sort of are you looking at a different type of motion essentially and get happy, or is there a kind of motion which makes you all feel trended? Like, okay, this is not good for our team, particularly, or for myself individually. Anybody can take this.
I think we both are smiling because we both know there's only one answer to the one which we both like. So we have this thing where any soft motion, it is about feelings, relationships, friendships, or anything like that. We see it, and both me and Dhruv, we just look at each other and eyes pop out because we're like, this is our space. And this is where I think my idea of dramatization and looking at judges very emotionally
Yes.
helps the most, because I can really look at them and tell them how a person feels. And we have the simplest cases mostly in these type of motions where it's like people feel bad, and that's the extension. And this is Dhruv wording to me. Often in prep, Dhruv looks at me as like people just feel bad. I'm just like, yeah, that's true. He's like, that's the case. And we've often run this in the simplest manners. I think that's definitely the type of things we look forward to the most. But yeah.
I love that because now we spoke about this just before the interview started, but from India especially, generally the kind of people who go through the international circuit are having these complicated engineering backgrounds, literal rocket scientists trying to change the world, and then debate is a side sport for them. And we have, of course, right now uh, honorable BCom honors graduates with us. And when you all see this motion, it's almost sort of euphoric or prophetic to have this motion come forward against perhaps another engineering student who's going to overcomplicate the motion. And you can just go with something as simple and uncomplicated, like people feel bad, and the judge feels, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. Like, how do you fight against that? Like, what are they going to say? People don't feel bad, you know?
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. And what is the kind of motion you all don't like? I assume it's going to be the polar opposite, perhaps. Perhaps you all don't like highly technical motions. But yeah, please take it away.
Yeah, so I think just answering this question as well. For me, I actually like agree with Sahaj. I like soft motions a lot, but the feedback that I've always gotten is that I perform better in hard motions, in IR, like finance, economics, etc. So I think I'm not completely sure which I prefer because my performances tend to come out in hard motions, but personally I prefer soft motions. I'm still not completely sure, but I think Sahaj can answer the question better around the themes that he doesn't like. I think there's a clear answer for Sahaj here. Yeah.
So, funnily enough, and this is where I think most people laugh at my face, that despite being a BCom honor student, I hate finance motions. I think I struggle in finance and economics the most. And I think for 3 years, and Drew hates it when I say this because he thinks it's not that big of a problem for me. But as soon as I see a finance motion, I'm like, Drew, all you, because I'm not going to lead prep, I'm not going to talk much, because it just switches my mind off to another extent, which also makes sense because it tells me that I did BCom honors because I didn't want to do science. Arts was something which was not very popular. So we were like, let's do commerce. So I don't think it's truly my passion yet. I'm far from it. So definitely finance and economics is something I dread. But funnily enough, seeing our performances, I think we've done reasonably well in finance, despite me hating it. So I think, yeah, that's one theme clearly for me. Drew's fine with it, but I think I don't know.
Okay, I think before the audience kills me for keeping them away from some of the main tea that we can have on this podcast, as I sip my coffee. How was the World Championship for you? It's your first one, not your last one. Hopefully, I'm looking at Sahed with sort of glaring eyes and threats,
Yeah.
on behalf of KD as well. But what was your experience like? Tell me everything from the day you all decided, okay, I want to do this, to your preparation for it, both like sort of actual debate preparation for it and mentally sort of sitting at home, and being like, "Arey, world championship aega," and then getting slightly more dreadful ki aa raha hai, what was that
Yeah.
feeling like? And then the main day. So like now I want her to be in story mode. Take 20 minutes if I have to, but tell me everything.
Do you have something, or should I do what first now? But anyways, I think I can start.
Yeah.
I think we. So I think the first thought we had of doing worlds ever was actually 2024, uh, 23 in fact, because coming to Vietnam Worlds, when Vietnam Worlds was announced and people started discussing about going there, me and Dhruv had consistently been doing a lot of BPs in India, especially, and there was this one tournament specifically which we both really looked back to and we said this is the turning point, which was RCL in Bangalore, where we had prepped for that one tournament because big comp in the south. We really did not have a good prep for it. We were losing mocks left, right, and center, but we ended up doing really well at the tournament. So once we got out of the tournament, we went to finals, did reasonably well there, and we got really good feedback from a lot of the international judges as well. So we thought maybe we're good enough to probably try our shot at Worlds. And it was Vietnam, so more accessible than any other Worlds, and people were going, which we knew. But suddenly, as you had luck have it, that we had our exams for Delhi University directly coinciding with World schedule. It's almost like it was planned.
Yeah.
So the days got postponed. Our plan got absolutely bonkers. We thought we can at least try for an online slot, try and do it with our exams. Eventually, we decided, what, online is probably not worth it. But that's, I think, the first time where we kept in our mind that we should do Worlds. But I think the actual plans for Sofia happened after hostels. I think after hostels is when we decided that what, Sofia is the time where we'll have our college done. Most probably we should be in a space where we are free. So why don't we go for it? And last year, I think in January, February, when the payments rolled out and we had to make a payment, that's when I think it became quite a reality that okay, we are doing worlds. Now let's backtrack and see where we need to be to make sure we give our best shot. So I think in our mind, we were mentally starting to talk about, worlds is happening, this, that, and we used to speak to Sai, Angad, Pranav, all these people who've done worlds, and they used to give us so many lores, this happens, that happens, and we used to feel like, okay, this seems pretty interesting because this it feels like it's massive. So mentally, we are also discussing whether are we actually ready or are we not? I mean, we are ready, but it's still a big deal to think about doing worlds possibly. But yeah, that's when we officially decided, sat together and said, it's February 2025, we're going to Worlds in December. So that's when the mental prep and just what to do with it started. Talked to a lot of people, consulted a lot of people, and that's when we decided we'll do it. But yeah, through, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah, yeah. So I think just like adding to it, 2023 is where it all began. Especially after we did RCL in like around August and September, we just really wanted to do Worlds. Like that's something that was really important for us. But I think the reason that we skipped out on Panama was mainly accessibility. It was just too far. We just weren't sure that like so the amount of money that was going to be required was going to be really large versus Sofia. It's a bit nearby. The flights are also cheaper. So I think that also became an important metric for us to decide whether you want to just go for Panama or whether you want to go for a Worlds which is also a bit nearby. So I think Sofia, Bulgaria being like Eastern Europe, I think that was just the perfect sweet spot that opened up this opportunity for us where we are like okay and we are comfortable with being able to fund whatever we have to fund. But again, it's just not being that far in general as well. I think secondarily, like the excitement just kept increasing as we like were getting closer to the tournament. Even around February and March, we started doing domestic competitions just as preparation. Worlds did feel a bit far then, but as we started doing more competitions around July, around August, around September, I think the anticipation just started building up. Where like when we were in the month of November and December, it's not that we were very anxious; it's that we were like a mix of nervousness and excitement because we wanted to showcase the best version of ourselves. So we actually took coaching from Ilya as well, and that helped us a lot with our mental game. So I think that's something which was very very crucial for us, not just the technical skills that we were able to get, but also like just the mental game, just the mindset. So I think that was something which was also really really important for us. I think secondarily what also really helped me is having other things that I was also doing at that time, which meant that this didn't become very very overwhelming as well. So simultaneously while like preparing for Worlds, I was also preparing simultaneously for CAT preparation. And I think that just meant that even if I was not performing that well in prep competitions, or even if everything wasn't going in my favor, I had an other avenue that I needed to focus on and like put my energy into. And I think that's something that is a very important advice that I think like can work for any single student who's preparing for majors in general. Just have other goals and aspirations that you're also working towards, because if you just have one goal and it becomes your identity, then your emotional state is going to keep fluctuating with how you perform within that one thing. But if you have other things that you're also focusing on, then you can put back your energy and also put your energy in other things. And I think like that's also the recipe for success as well. Being able to deal with pressure is emotional detachment to a large degree. Being excited and being nervous is fine, but if you just think about something too much and you start to overthink it, then that also affects your performance. So I think this was something which was really important for us in general. Just adding another thing which really helped us was just vacationing in Bulgaria before the tournament started. So we went to Sofia 3-4 days before. That's something that we had planned. Sahed booked out so Sahed is the best organizer. I'll just give him a clear shout out here. Our Australs trip, even the current Sofia trip, like the way he plans, the way he organizes, the way he selects hotels, and the metrics that he uses are just so good, and that like actually helped us in the experiences as well. So I think if we were just to come one day before, the anticipation and pressure would have been a lot higher. But we actually celebrated the Christmas here. We saw snowfall. We went to the Christmas market. We actually drank a very good cup of hot chocolate, and all of these things just relaxed us a lot. So when every single Indian contingent was coming in, we were already relaxed. We were already familiar with the Bulgarian environment, the temperature, which is just so cold, like -5, -7. So I think that's something which really helped us. After the tournament, Sahaj had to go. I still stayed back. I went to Greece. I also vacationed there a bit. But yeah, I think the 4 or 5 days before the tournament started, those were really, really important for us to like get relaxed, rehabilitate ourselves, and I think that was really good for us. But
Yeah. And I remember, I think this one specific conversation we had, I think, I don't know if it's July or August, where I was talking to Pranav and like all these people who done World before, and Sai and Mahor had taken coaching from India, I remember. And I kept, Pranav specifically kept telling us, and even Sriram, we consulted, and they both told us, you should take coaching, you should take coaching. And to be very honest, this is something which I mean, back then were something we had to face, and today I feel it was a big problem, which I think people need to get out of, is that coaching felt like such a big thing that we almost felt like, why should we? Because it feels like it's a little too much. We can probably prep on our own, etc. But I mean, massive thanks to all the people who pushed us to take coaching in the first place, because it was absolutely a game changer. I don't think mentally we would have been so ready, even if we had worked on other things, if we hadn't taken coaching. But the fact that we did that at least gave us a proper thing that we have 3 months, and this is how the preparation has to look like. Because one thing we were very sure, both of us, that if, and personally in my hand, if I this was the only words I was doing, at least at that time, my mentally I was ready, that I really want to go there absolutely prepared. So that meant that prep had to be real. It can't just be that, lackluster prep, not just doing comps, but actually reading up technical things in our speeches, very specific details. So we wanted to be absolutely ready when we go to Worlds. So I think massive shout out to Ilya here, because I mean, amazing coach, was there 24/7. Used to send us videos, and the best thing I liked about him, because funnily enough, I hate reading. Till date, if you tell me pick up this book and read, I will run away. So that's the funniest when I tell people, because they're like, you're a debater, aren't you supposed to read? I'm like, no, I hate reading. And that's one thing which my dad has been after my life since I was a kid, that please read, but I don't. So one thing Ilya asked both of us was like, are you both readers or do you like watching videos? And we were like, I think both of us just like watching videos or talking, just not reading. And he adjusted to that. He said, okay, you know what, these are YouTube channels you can watch, here are videos you can watch. So it wasn't a cliche that you have to read and to in order to do well, which is also a message to a lot of people that it's fine if you don't like to read. Classic example here, absolutely hate reading. The only novel I've read is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, all parts, very, very crucially. But yeah, so prep helped. And I think, as Dhruv said, we made sure we go 3-4 days in advance. Went there, settled in. Of course, the excitement kept building, that, worlds, everybody kept saying this, that, what happens day one. And this world, especially, I think, because it had like 340 teams, which was, I think, higher in number than as compared to the previous 2-3 editions. And the judge pool seemed insane. The teams were insane. So we were like, this is a good words you've chosen to do, probably get the maximum out of it. And yeah, day one, I think, was of workshops we had. And I remember through attending Ashish's workshop in another room and me attending Paula's workshop in another room, because you were like, let's get the maximum out of it. And you feel like you're so prepared, and you've read up on everything. And I'm like, oh, I know this and I know that. And you sit there and you look left and right. And as people with these amount of massive matter files probably double, triple your size, and you're like, okay, everybody's prepared. Like at Worlds, it's not like people just show up. That was the big turning point, I think, that I realized that sure I've prepared, but so have these guys. So when I enter day one, round one tomorrow, it's starting again. Like you don't know who you're going to face. Everybody's come well prepared. Everybody knows that there are going to be certain emotions that are going to come up. So I think that was a pretty solid mental switch on point for me. That you know what, things are real. Now we've vacationed enough. 3 days, let's get into the zone and face the people who have prepared probably more than us. Maybe some of them less than us, but they've all prepared. So yeah, that was a build up to Worlds, I would say, to quite a large degree. And then yeah, the rounds were a whole separate story, I would say.
Oh, there's so much to cover. Do you want to
Yeah.
add something, KD, before I go?
Yeah, I think I also just want to give two very, very important shout outs to people in our domestic circuit. I think firstly, Pranav, like the informal conversations just leading up to Worlds, specifically for me, and I think definitely for Sahaj as well, they were very, very important. Just talking to someone who has like so much experience in majors, like sixth, seventh Worlds, they have done like so many Worlds as well, just so many finals. I think just being able to talk to them, and if we were nervous, if we were anxious, just knowing there is someone there who's willing to listen, I think that was a very, very important factor as well. I think the second shout out goes to Sai, because when we were in Sofia, the mental game is something that Sai really helped us with, because they had done like worlds previous years also. The one important advice I still remember is that they told us that please don't look at the backtabbing, the Israeli backtabbing, that what it's called. Don't look at that, because if the verdict goes your way, you're probably going to get really confident. But if the silent round decisions just don't go your way, then you won't be able to concentrate in the next round. And I think that is some advice that I took to heart. I didn't look at the back tab at all. Like even Sahed didn't look at the back tab, and we just didn't know which room we were going into. We just didn't care about our silent round results. So I think Pranav and Sai, like major shout outs to them definitely for our journey as well.
Perfect. I love the shout out, especially because one person's name is very close to mine. Give me 1 second. I dropped my pen while talking, so I'm going to take like 2 seconds to run and come back. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now that we have all agreed, we won't discuss this pen falling down routine in the interview itself. Although people can see this. Hi, guys. I will say one thing, which is everything said and done, I understand exactly why KD wants a hedge at Ottawa. It's because he is the travel agent that everybody's wanting with that.
You want to slide
That's something that I've understood. In which case, Sahaj, please come to Ottawa. I will join you guys, right? And we can take it from there. Second, now there's a lot to cover over here. First thing which I've seen before is that I've spoken to Sai in the past. I've spoken to all these guys, and I think this is a routine which I've noticed that generally they have like sometimes they have like a bad prep tournament going into Worlds, and they then do much better than they expected in the Worlds. And I think that might be like this thing that you put in more effort because you think you're not doing well, essentially, which could be the case, and it works sort of as an angel in disguise. It's very interesting to see that pattern emerge, I think, year after year when I have these conversations. And it it's interesting how you've chosen not to go for, let's say, the Panama Worlds uh, for the distance. You're going for Sophia's, and then what's the reason behind now? Katie, you're open to being somebody who goes to Ottawa, which is like sort of a world away. It's like maybe on Mars or something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to answer that question, I think it's just our experience at Sofia as well. Uh, Going to like first worlds, which is very, very far and very, very distant, is something that seems a bit daunting. But after we have gone to like another worlds before, Ottawa just doesn't seem that far away. Presumably, if the next worlds happened at Panama, this is something that I might decide to do anyways. So I think it's just that like you don't want your first worlds to be really far away and like be very, very costly. But if you have already done slightly well, then presumably the second is somewhere where you are a bit more comfortable opting into it. So yeah.
Fair enough. It's a sunk cost fallacy of great debaters, I guess. You can sort of, once I've done it once, it's like second time is like, what's the problem? So, but I love it. I think it's good to see that. I wish. I mean, we've discussed this so many times. Like, debating should become more accessible even in India. and especially at the global scale, going like traveling far and wide for debate is slightly not possible for every debater. So there might be really good ones who can compete at this level who are not able to or don't have the awareness of how to like, get either allot these funds or get funds. You will practice for these kind of things. You gave a lot of credit to coaching, and of course the mental block which comes with first getting a coach, but second the coaching itself. So I have a couple of coaching related questions. First, number one, what was the experience like? I know I've spoken a bit about that in the sense of like, oh okay, y'all preferred video content over reading, so y'all got that personalization. I love that. But I would like to know, like, when it comes to technicals or when it comes to something like that as well, like what about coaching makes it so much better? Because y'all are already experienced by this point, you've done a lot of debates, you have got that muscle in, but is it like this moment where because you are so focused on technicals, they give you the bigger picture, or is it the opposite? That you've gotten so good at the smaller things, you've started focusing on the bigger picture, and they get you right back to the basics. You know? So, number one, I'd like to ask that, and second, something which perhaps everybody who's watching this can sort of learn from. Uh, you said that they gave you a couple of YouTube channels that could benefit the debater. So, is there any shout out you could perhaps give to any YouTube channel that you all sort of took a particular interest in to learn how to debate a bit more for the world stage? Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely one YouTube channel which comes to my mind straight away is TLDR, which was
Yeah.
both TLDR EU and TLDR Global. I think it's well known. I didn't know much of it because I didn't used to watch it every day or something. But yeah, that became a daily thing. Every day, I think for the last 2 months, Ilya used to send us two videos every day. One of them was definitely from TLDR, if the other one was different. So covering, and this was specific step. It used to start from there, and I think often me and Dhruv used to realize that once we watched one video of TLDR, both of us would talk about it and then go more into detail. Let's watch a couple of more on this, let's watch a couple of more on this other topic, which you think is more important or something like that. But TLDR became that very good everyday base point to see, okay, this we know is other basics happening. Now we know this is more important, let's go into details there. But TLDR became that regular go-to channel to know what's happening, where are we with most things. And I think the other was Money and Macro, if I'm remembering the name correctly. But I think that was for economics and finance. That was a big thing for me because very simplified ways of explaining economics, which I never understood in college. But yeah, that's specifically for a couple of very niche topics within economics we thought can come and stuff like that. But yeah, these two definitely come to mind. I mean, about coaching, I can just quickly cover this before Dhruv adds in that. I think more than anything, it was having a different perspective to point out your flaws, which we didn't realize. Because what we realized was happening is that we used to go to the same Indian comms, mostly meet the same judges. Of course, in the prep comms, we had new judges in the European circuit judging us, etc. But for a large part of the 2 3 years we were debating, we often went to the same cycle of judges, the same set of people, same sort of people who we were debating against as well. So it almost became that there's stagnation to the extent where people giving you feedback also becomes repetitive. So you almost feel like, okay, is this the only flaw, or is there just like people are just like getting used to the ways that we speak? And I think the first session with Ilya, I remember, where Ilya was like, you know what, just prep. Both of you prep. I'll just notice the prep and then we'll discuss. And I think this is the funniest because after prep, I remember he asked, first he asked me that, what do you think, how in one line describe your case? I was like, okay, this is the case. And then he said, okay, you mute yourself, Dhruv, why don't you describe your case? And what we both realized was that our both one lines were slightly different. So he's like, don't you think it's funny that both of your teammates, you prep together, but your one lines are actually slightly different? And we're like, yeah, that's probably true. And then he breaks it down to the minutest details. So you realize that it is solving a big issue, but the ways he's doing it is often with the very small changes. And those small changes almost became, we couldn't see it. Like it was very difficult for us to now analyze our own prep. We just got so used to it. I say one word, Dhruv knows what I'm talking about, and it's the other way around. So it was very difficult for us to microanalyze the way we work. For somebody externally to come in with that stature and that amount of experience to point those things out live, I think that became a crucial differing point of view compared to us and the people who we were meeting regularly in the circuit.
Yeah. KD?
Yeah, I think just to add to what Sahed has already said, a large part of our coaching, even in terms of technical skills, was just getting back to basics. A lot of times we tend to overcomplicate our case. We tend to use fancy terms. We tend to use a lot of jargons. I think this is a trend that I've also seen in our Indian circuit, and that's a trend that we probably want to go away from. But a large part of our coaching, was just illustrations and visualizations. So Ilya just told us simply, whenever you are trying to run any set, like anything in terms of setup or any characterization, I'll only allow you to run it if you can visualize what you are actually saying and think about an example in the real world as well. So after that, we realize that a lot of times we tend to run a lot of characterizations which are just incomplete, which are just random, which are a bit ambiguous because we don't really realize how they operate in the real world as well, right? So I think again, this is some like illustration and visualization, even in terms of impacting and how useful it can be, is something that I thought really helped me in terms of coaching. Just in terms of an example, like Ilya just told us, if you have to impact someone who's being a lazy person, just really think about it from their perspective. What would they do if you are a lazy person? How would you live your life? So put yourself in their shoes, and that is where you can unlock the actual impacting. So I think like both of these seem like very simple advices, but if you actually like look at them and you really try to think about them, a lot of the case actually unlocks if you're able to put yourself in the perspective of the other person and then try to impact a lot of stuff. So I think yeah, a lot of it was just simplifying everything. Like it's not that complex. People tend to overcomplicate a lot of stuff. So get back to the basics: illustrate, visualize, impact. So I think that's like majority of the things that we actually learned.
Funnily enough, whenever my juniors today in college ask me, okay, give us some advice on this motion, and I tell them something, they're like, okay, but that we know. And I was like, yeah, we know all of it. It's just applying it is difficult. So the best advice often comes from the biggest debaters, are often the simplest. So
Yeah.
there's nothing new I can give, or there's nothing very fancy I can tell you, which is going to miraculously make you a better debater. It's just doing the same thing 10 times every day, but make it consistent, which is a differing point, I think.
I think also, if I have to add to that from what I just heard, I think, like, for example, I mentioned that you're going in the circuit initially and you're getting a similar kind of feedback, and you're like, okay, so is this all I have to work on? And then you'll get a coach and you'll get a different perspective sometimes, and maybe on the same thing that you'll know, but in a manner in which hits you. Of course, that's first thing, coaching ability. So everybody can have the same advice for you, but the way they present it is the ability to teach in reality.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there is the second element to it, which is, I assume here you had fresh eyes. Somebody y'all didn't have so much direct access to, especially when y'all were going around the circuit, and the fresh eyes gave you and you know the coach the idea to essentially impact you guys in a better way,
Yeah.
if it makes sense, because you're not. It's like saying, now if I this is a random cricket analogy, since I know one of y'all, I think KD used to play cricket, but I feel when you know Kohli has played so many hundreds and hit so many hundreds, you stop sort of treating him the way he is currently and start making him relying on his past laurels to stay in the team. I'm not saying Kohli should go out of the team, guys. No subscriber loss over here. I know Kohli has an insane amount of fans. I think I'm a huge fan, but all things being said, you have to sort of register them on their current form, right, to some extent. So this is what happened with you guys, basically initially, where everybody knew you all across debate tournaments. So they had like this version of you. They said, "Oh, you all did not do this in this debate, but I know it's possible because you all did that in that debate," and the advice gets crumpled up. So the fresh eyes element of it, I think, really would help. So
No, absolutely, yeah. And I think
that's
also fresh eyes coming from a person who's also from a very, very different circle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay. Yes.
because we also realize that European comps is something which we haven't done too many of. Like before prep,
Yes.
we don't think we had done too many European comps. And then when we had Ilya from that circuit, specifically coming from the Eastern European circuit, he's debated in that circuit for quite some time.
Yes.
Certain advices, they were very different, or at least the way Ilya used to present it, they were very different from certain advices we used to get from Asian judges or Indian judges specifically. And we realized that's the differing thing, right? That's every circuit has these slightly different values, slightly
Yes.
different ways of working. And I think secondly, also, it is also, I mean, I don't know if you like me saying that, but he's also a debater who's debated for 10 years now. So his prime time of debating also had a lot of different jargons as compared to today. I remember we used to say stuff like, some random weighing metric, I'll put it in my speech or Google put it. And he'll be like, yeah, but what does that mean? And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. I don't know that people say it. Everybody says it. He's like, I don't like using these words. So that also put in our perspective, what? Just because we say something doesn't mean we have to continue saying it. What does it actually mean? Like, are we making sense of what we are saying?
Is
So
there any
those fresh
example
eyes,
of
as
what
you
all
said,
was saying, just so the debaters can perhaps relate to that?
I think delta was something I think Ilya didn't like, if I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah. I remember he said, "What does delta mean?" I was like, "I don't know. People use it. Like, it's common though." But he was like, "So the logic is that if you're using a word, can you put it simply to prove what you're saying? Like delta just means marginally we are better. So why don't you just explain why you're better? You don't have to say here is the delta, right? Judges are good enough to recognize that." But like, yeah, that's probably true. So certain things
Yeah.
like that.
I think just to add to this, like specifically to me as well, Ilya's problem was that I was using weighing metrics. I just wasn't justifying like that's the most important metric to judge the debate on. So even like, especially in my web speech, I'd use terms like likelihood, I'd use terms like intensity. Elias like, fine, but why is this the way that the debate should be judged? It's still not clear why intensity is the most important metric. And I think that's the advice that I also have for the circuit. A lot of times, speakers tend to know the metrics that they want to use to weigh their cases, but they don't comparatively weigh why their metric is the more important one than the other metric that the other side would weigh their case on. So weighing comparatively of metrics is something that's not common in the Indian circuit, and that's something that needs to be done more. It's not that you need to prove likelihood. Just tell the judges why likelihood should be the way this debate needs to be judged. That's the most important thing. But
You
But
know,
also,
and
you're
what
right.
I
It's also ability. It's also ability. Like it's Ilya.
yeah.
So I mean, at the end of the day, we used to realize that certain debates used to make us do drills on were like of tin, all these big eyes, Khadar. We used to be like, okay,
yeah.
this is his average debate. Like this is what he sees. Like, oh yeah, just another drill, and we are like, oh, this is tough. I think that level also was good because we had somebody of that stature coming and telling us that do this, do that with a lot of experience. So that helped.
100%. It's so good to know that people who basically giants in the community are still so approachable and so open to being
Absolutely.
involved in the journey of younger debaters. And I have to say, younger debaters are people who just an open break. So imagine where they are, in the sense of how they experience. It's so funny. I was going to just say that once that hits you, like once as a debater, you realize that okay, this is like it feels like common sense later on. And of course, I have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
clash
yeah.
the actual metrics that are okay. You're proving the metric, but I'm not saying why the metric is most important. It sort of
Yeah.
sounds like why was I like if you feel so dumb to not do it later on, but it's one of those things which actually leaves your sight. You think it's so obvious, you don't do it, right? Or that if you've done a good job justifying the metric, it will seem like it's most important without explicitly
Yeah.
mentioning it. So it's one of those things. I love that that's been brought up right now as well. Something I was going to touch upon, which I think Sahed spoke of a bit, was the fact that the different countries and different circuits have different norms, different words, different things going on that they deem to be the best. And of course, that is highly subjective, one could say, but it's something that debate is testing you. Like the cultural appropriation of that debate circuit is important to get into. Otherwise, you're sort of fighting upstream
Yeah.
in that battle. One of the best examples, or let's say the most extreme examples I have heard till date, came from Kotaro, who the from Japan, and he had come to I think Oxford for a debate either last year or last to last year. This year he'd come, but I think this happened to him 2 years ago. And in Oxford, in UK as a whole, there's a wider acceptance of things like BDSM. And there was a motion which was sort of relating to BDSM and things of that nature. So he went in his reply speech trying to essentially say, of course, BDSM is slightly like a taboo or things of that nature. But
Yeah.
the other side, which was the British team, came in and said, there's no taboo, there's nothing wrong, there are safe words, everybody knows this. And he sat over there thinking, what, everybody knows this? You know? And I think it's one of those moments where he realized how different, even after being an international debater for a while, he realized how different these circuits can be. And it's all culturally ingrained. Forget the debate circuit, it's like wider than that, right? It's like normal day to day cultural norms seeping into debate. Essentially,
Correct.
people bring with them. So, uh, I'll have to ask you guys now. First, one thing I know now was the idea of having a coach help you guys over here and help you like sort of get yourselves ready for Bulgaria. But I think one thing I would like to know is Ottawa. Like KD, I know you're going for sure. Sahed is already booking his tickets. I can see that. At the back of his brain, he's going to pull you along till the last moment and come through. Uh, how do you plan now going forward and just generally to prepare yourself for these cultural norms? Because okay, East Europe covered, but Canada is going to be a different ballgame altogether. You know, yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely the norms are going to be different from Europe as well, like the North American norms and how they definitely debate. I think specifically for me, what I was planning is that I'm going to start MBA around June, which means I really just won't have a lot of time to do a lot of preparation, like preparatory competitions. So the way that I'm planning to do prep for Ottawa is just around being aware about what's going on in the world, just ensuring that in terms of content and matter, I'm just really well equipped. Because I just realistically, I just won't have the time to do preparatory competitions when like simultaneously with my MBA. Just to like probably understand the norms better, I think just doing 1 to 2 preparatory competitions can still be helpful in that circuit, and just interacting with those circuits, getting the feedback from them, what they prioritize, what they value. I definitely don't think that's going to be enough, but like if it's another team which is planning, I definitely suggest them to do like at least 4 to 5 preparatory competitions in the North American circuit, just for you to get better prepared with what the norms are. And presumably, if like you can, like getting a coach from that environment and from that circuit can also be very, very helpful here as well. So
I think
How
one
do
other
you?
thing was, Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, and I just hold your thought for a second because I will forget this one. I have no place
Yeah.
on the paper I'm writing right now. So, uh, how would you recommend people finding these coaches, particularly for these circuits, if they haven't had that experience?
Yeah, I think that's actually a good question. Just talking to circuit dinos is something which is really important because we really just didn't know like Ilya as well directly. Sai and Mahur had taken coaching from them, so that was our way in. But like if anyone is planning, I'm definitely sure like the circuit dinos, Pranav, Sai, if they have any sort of contacts at all, they would be really help. Like they would be willing to help as well. And if someone reaches out to us and if we could recommend them to certain people, we would also do that. So I think it's just direct communication with Pranav, Sai, or even me or Sahed, and then we could also like help you like get someone recommended. Me and Sej could also talk to Ilya, and Ilya could also recommend us some people from that circuit who they could also contact. So I understand that it's still a bit of a process to find a good coach, but it can be done with the right communications.
Fair enough. Yes, Sahaj.
Yeah, actually, no. Actually, just on that, I think it's also important that people feel it's okay to reach out for these things. Because I think there
Yeah.
is, although I think in the northern circuit, people know people like Sai Younger, Vanch, people know us now. Sharon Nayanthara in Bombay. I think it's also sometimes restricted. People you know of who you've interacted with, you might reach out to. But I think it's also okay to reach out to people who you've not spoken to before or who you just
Yeah.
like talking to initially, because trust me to it, like as much as I've spoken to a lot of experienced debaters in the Indian circuit, none of us are more happy to see like active participation and people coming and saying, we want to do majors. And I was actually speaking to another couple of teams the other day who said, we want to do majors, but we're but if we you come to us with that, we will ensure you do awards after that because we want to push you to do and like, send more teams. So with regards to coaching as well, people are more than happy to help out, give suggestions, reach out to people for you. So yeah, definitely reach out and then see how it works out with the way forward.
And I'm going to ask this on behalf of a couple of people who are watching who might want to go for worlds, maybe the Ottawa one, let's say, right? And they think to themselves, okay, now we'll get a dyno to sort of either recommend us or train us or whatever it is. And of course, to anybody who doesn't know, a dyno is essentially somebody who's been there, done that kind of a debater, right? But I think if that happens, are you all also open to practicing with another team essentially for the tournament from India? So of course maybe till the last month where you all perhaps do your own solo journeys or last 2 months. But in the meantime, heading up to going to prep tournaments together, stuff like that essentially. Are you all open to that? So maybe perhaps a team can reach out to you to sort of combine your efforts to get a gold for India.
Bro, that's you. That's your question.
Yeah, so like definitely I'm open to that. The amount of time I'll have depends again on how rigorous the MBA is going to be.
Yeah.
I've heard from everyone you just won't have any time. So again, but I definitely like to help in any way that I can. So yeah, I'm open to
Fair
it.
enough. Perfect. Okay. So I've done the hard part, guys. I've made them on camera say they're gonna help even if they don't want to, so that their PR looks good. So y'all can just sort of take this and consider it a verbal agreement for some reason and go
Yeah.
for it, right? Although it won't really stand, but hey, we do what we want to do. Regardless. Now, getting into a bit more about sort of your lives, because I'm quite intrusive in that sense. Like, what's your personal lives like, stuff like that? Girlfriend, boyfriend, or messing around. But I think more specifically, like what things outside of debate give you all peace? If there was the yin yang for you guys, because I've heard, for example, Mahor told me that he's somebody who's really into rap. So he sits and he listens to rap songs and pumps himself up before debate, after debates, and somehow the most violent raps are the ones which make him the most peaceful. So whatever's going on over there, I get it personally, but also I think to a lot of people that's going to be like, what the hell, right? So I'd like to ask you guys, what keeps y'all sort of in the right zone? Because like right now, y'all have maybe it's been a month just about till from your tournament, and y'all are sitting over here, and it feels like it's already done. That's what the feeling might be sometimes. Still stuck sort of in Sophia's thinking about certain rounds, thinking about the drive, the adrenaline rush, and stuff like that. I want to know what they all go back to. Like, is there maybe it's songs, maybe it's something else, maybe it's running right now. Running is taken quite the upswing in India, right, or even abroad. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what's the habits and hobbies that keep you?
Yeah. So, Seth, do you want to take it first, or should I go?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think specifically for me, it's a very specific niche. It's sad Bollywood songs that I really like listening to. Specifically early 2000s, like around 2005 to 2010. Ajab Prem Ki Gazab Kahani, Love Aajkal,
Oh,
Jab We
yeah,
Met,
That's
Zindagi Na
that's
Milegi Dobara,
that's
Ye
both.
the
Jawani Hai
dinos
Diwani.
of Bollywood.
Yeah, so I have like a niche playlist of 40 to 50 old songs that I just resort back to whenever I'm feeling a little sad, even when I'm feeling a little happy. So I just like listening to these sad songs a lot. Secondarily, I know this might sound a bit boring to a lot of people. I just like walking a lot, not specifically running, just walking. I think specifically if you feel a bit anxious and if you feel like just the world is very fast paced in general, walking just slows it down for me. I just feel like present in the moment. So I think walking is something that also really helps me a lot. But yeah, so I think these two activities in general are very, very helpful for me. I also got a table tennis table at home, so I just like to play table tennis a lot, and I think that's something which is also very, very good. Also, if like anyone is a very good table tennis player, you can reach out to me. We can schedule a match. I'm also very competitive in that. So, yeah.
You
He's
know what? I'm
competitive.
gonna
He's
take
good
you up
or
on that personally. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
he's
sure.
competitive. Whether he's good or not, we'll see.
Fair
You're
enough,
right.
fair enough.
But actually, firstly, it makes sense you've gone towards like a table tennis regime, considering the fact you have a cricket background. That was the I used to play cricket as well in my school days, and later on, when it was hard to get so many players together, and you've got to still keep that hand-eye coordination type of sport going, and going to a tennis court is a lot of investment and time and stuff. I
Yeah,
think table tennis
definitely.
is really, really good to sort of get things done indoors, especially in this country. So I'm currently in the UK, and it rains randomly throughout the year, the most erratic weather in the world. So indoor sports is sort of the best I have going for me right now. So definitely. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're somebody who looks at your calm notion to be a heartbroken Ranbir Kapoor, or you're going towards a Marty Supreme moment in competitive ping pong, or you're going towards what's left. I think there was another walking, which is, by the way, I was going to mention this about the walking, the sort of, whether it be Socrates or somebody else, Aristotle and the philosophers of the world actually spoke about walking to be the exercise or movement motion which got their arguments to be much much better. So you might just sort of be taking unknowingly or knowingly the advice of other dinos that have come and gone when it comes to argumentation. That's brilliant. Yes, Sahej.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one thing which is common with Dhruv is love his playlist. I mean, my type of music is entirely exactly the same. It is literally the same. You'll see me and Dhruv sending us voice notes with just singing songs, and they're often the ones which he's quoted right now. He has a better playlist than me for sure. So that's one thing I go to for more of these songs. But I mean, this is a good segue to give a shout out as well. I am dating as well, so my yeah, I talking to my girlfriend is almost something I do every day. A big part of getting me like keeping me sane throughout my prep as well. Uh, but yeah, in terms of hobbies, I love watching movies. I am somebody who wants to probably be an actor one day. That was a childhood dream which I'm trying to reignite right now by doing acting workshops on the side. But yeah, that's something which I do on the side, and I love going to the gym whenever I'm angry or just in general. So debate prep coincide with that as well. So after having a bad day at debate prep or after just having a bad mock in general, head to the gym. It's about 100 meters from my place, 24/7. I used to go at midnight, 1 o'clock, just to get let the heat out there. But yeah, that was my avenue. Keep myself a little sane outside debate.
So if I were to ever live close to you and I saw you going to gym every single day, I should presume you've had an argument. Number one, you
Yeah,
still go whenever you're angry. But I think, like, even that aside, does WUDC know you all had three members on that plane with you guys on the team? Because I don't think it's allowed if your girlfriend is sort of there, helping you with this tournament in some way. But I love that. I think it's always good to have somebody alongside you, personal life who, I don't know whether she was a debater. Is this a debate couple essentially, which is okay,
yeah.
fair enough. That really helps
We
you.
were dating before college debate, but actually, funnily enough, me and my girlfriend were a part of the same debate team in 10th grade, with her mother being the person who coached our team.
Oh man.
So that was the starting point, and then yeah, she was also a college debater as well in a
Were
different
you in
college.
ICSE or were you in CBSE or was there an
CBSE. I was in
CBSE?
CBSE,
Fair enough.
both
Fair
army
enough.
background, so army school. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, fair enough. So both, a lot of common things are going on over there. Who wins the arguments in the relationship, if I might ask?
That's, I mean, safest answer is her, and the correct answer is also her. So yeah, it's mostly
Fair
her.
enough. You can
I am
change the answer later on.
argumentative.
But yeah. Okay, and something you spoke about acting. I was wondering, you said workshops as well. Are you based in Mumbai, number one?
I'm based in Delhi, but you said it. I mean, I want to shift to Bombay. I did an acting workshop in Mandi House in Delhi last year, 4 5 months with my job. So it was on the weekends, and yeah, shifting to Bombay is something which I want to possibly do, but let's see. Don't want to jinx
So
it.
there is an overlap there as well because I have a place. So I'm from Pune, which is very like, uncomfortably close to Mumbai in some ways, and other ways not really. But I feel the I have accessibility in a good way, to Mumbai.
Yeah, correct.
And do you know Mukesh Chabra?
Of course, yeah, yeah. Casting director.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So have you done his online just in act workshops? Are you thinking of going in person essentially?
I am thinking of doing it in person, but yeah,
In
I've
person.
had a look at them.
I
Yeah,
think, and I might be wrong about this, but he ever so often has this sort of challenge online where every Tuesday you're supposed to like perhaps make a recording of yourself acting some piece, publish it on Instagram, and if he likes it, he might invite you to the workshop himself, something like that. I think it's like a selective thing, and he casts people in movies through that little every Tuesday. It's something
yeah,
like Tuesdays with MKCC, like Mukesh has a casting company through that. So I totally recommend it if you ever want to go for it. I have a friend who's gotten a good opportunity through that before. Like with Sushmita Sen, there was I think a series on Amazon Prime with Sushmita Sen he got through that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's also
okay,
something I
that's
discussed with Dhruv there about that. I should start probably recording stuff, and he used to tell me, you should do it, you should do it. Because I remember we made these very silly vlogs during Worlds. We said, we'll make these vlogs and we'll just talk to the camera, and I still have a bunch of recordings. It's not gone anywhere. But I remember him telling me the same thing. He's like, "You're far more natural than me on this in this vlog," and I was like, "Yeah." So it's like probably do something about it. Let's see.
I 100% recommend it. I think especially
Yeah,
if you're looking to go the acting route, even if you change later on, it's the part of like the act itself which is what compels
yeah,
you to do that, right? So if
yeah.
you can get a decent following also over there, that's probably the biggest case you can make for yourself that people will like you on screen essentially, you know.
Yeah, true.
So that's the way it goes. Okay, now coming back to debate. For anybody who did not like acting, I'm done. I promise you guys. Um, I think there's a lot of good information people have gotten about your journeys, the kind of ways they can prepare, how you all prepared. Like there's a certain amount of things they can do to imitate through flattery, and then sort of learn through that, and other things they can sort of avoid because the do's and don'ts have been provided by you guys. But I also like to know the how does your study or academic life, whether that be from schooling, either be impacted by debate or how has it impacted your debate essentially. So for example, now of course I have a legal background, right? So if I'm going to go into debate, sometimes I can get happy if my opposition doesn't have a legal background and it's a like top, even if finance motion, there's so much regulation involved that I can bring like a whole like a dozen sort of Hansard debates or whichever debates which have happened in these parliaments, right? And come with the logic of that and how these laws were made in the first place to make them sound really stupid. And I'm really happy with that. But
Yeah.
my legal studies has probably been impacted far more by debate than my legal studies has impacted debate, essentially, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Right? So what does your journeys look like in that sense?
I mean, in my case, I actually never realized that, but I didn't notice my studying or what I was studying in general impacting, anything, any of my thoughts during debate. Which is funny because it should in some ways, because when you're studying finance, etc., it should be an easy application there, which I think I've seen Dhruv do a lot. He used to relate in saying this is a chapter we did in this, or this is just something we've covered.
Yeah.
I was never able to do that, probably because I was not paying attention through the chapters in class. But I think the way I have had studying and debating is that during 11th and 12th, I remember, and even 10th for that matter, I was somebody who, if I started debating for a couple of months, I used to almost put my studies in the backseat. And that was something which was quite a conflict at home as well. My dad used to tell me, it's great you're doing debate and stuff like that, but your studies and stuff like that. So I think it took quite some time to actually just balance the existence of both, forget intertwining anything, but just having both of together to know that I have to study or I have to do this along with it. That itself was a challenge. So the whole intertwining of things between the two never happened for me because the first step itself was a big challenge, just to have both of them in front of me. So I think that's something I faced. So the application never happened, but just making sure I have time for both of it was a bigger challenge.
Fair enough. I assume that's a similar answer for KD as well, so I can sort of take it from there.
I think not exactly, because
Okay.
honestly, like just to like reiterate, I think my grades suffered after I like became very involved in the debating circuit. Especially like getting 95 plus in 10th and 12th, and like getting a drop in 70s in like the undergrad. I think that specifically happened because I was at a competition like every single weekend. I wasn't studying a lot, so I think debating in terms of that definitely played a role in my grades suffering a bit. But secondarily, I think it also helped in a certain manner. You become a very good yapper, when you debate just a lot. So like answering very generic questions becomes a bit easier. You are able to add, instead of 3 reasons, 5 reasons in terms of your answer sheet. So I think you become a good yapper, but your grades can still suffer. So I think both are the things that I saw specifically for me. So
The this is something which I noticed with myself. So I've been into sort of the arts when it comes to like speaking or acting or debate since I was 5 years old, and I don't know what came first, the suffering of my grades or debate, right? But that doesn't mean I was a particularly bad academic student. I think I was doing
Yeah.
really well. Like, I was at the top of my class, but I know for a fact that I didn't really care about my marks as much as I did my debates. Like,
Right.
I didn't really care that my grades have gone down if my debate is up. But if my debate is low and my marks are up, I'm like, I'm studying too much. Like, very clearly, I'm studying too much. This is wrong. So I think 100%. I think I've noticed the generic answers as well. The answers get lengthier and lengthier regardless of the substance inside it. So regardless of the academic substance inside it, in the sense of like the how textbook copied they are essentially. So
Right.
uh, anyway, so coming back to perhaps something which the audience maybe right now our crowd, something which you might know are like primarily high school students, right? Like although they're connected with the university circuit very heavily, at
Yeah.
least for an organization which primarily serves high school students, a lot of the debaters watching this are people who are between the ages of let's say 8 to 18. That's the range. So I'm sure the ones who are like 10, 11 watching this are going to be world champions someday. Imagine watching this kind of content when I was 10 or 11, or we all were 10 or 11. That's a wild head start if you think about it. But to others as well, I would like to know if you were starting debate from scratch, like there's clean slate. What are the things you would start with? Like what are the kind of things you will want to do to have the graph go sort of steeply high initially, and then of course people will have their own journeys and relationships and stuff going on, which causes sort of a bandwagon personal effect. Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing I do recommend is something which helped me when I started debating in school. You really need to have this mindset. And again, this is one of the most typical answers, I think, but you genuinely need to start questioning a lot of things. So even if it's
Curiosity.
like some topic which comes up and you have time to prepare, let's say you have 15 days, 10 days to prepare for a speech, or it's a prepared competition or whatever it is, I think you need to start questioning a lot of the moving parts in that motion or in that topic, right? What are we actually talking about? Who does it actually impact? And this is one advice I give to most debaters, that the basics of debate actually lie in three or four fundamentals, like why, what, who, and
Hmm.
how. Like just the basics. And all words like you'll hear in university or even like senior school debating, like stakeholders, weighing, it's nothing but answering these questions. Like what are we talking about is characterization, how are they important is literally weighing. So often going to these fundamental questions is something which we do right now, but I think it's also something I recommend to people who are starting off. Like you see a topic, just ask yourself these four basic questions. You'll know a lot more as to where you stand, regardless of whether you
Love that.
really prep statistics or not. So that's definitely something I say. And second is just building confidence up is important. Because I think as much as I'm absolutely a lover for that, logic comes prior to the ability to speak, but I think the ability to speak is important. Like I have seen people who are far smarter than me, or they have far more knowledge than I do, but probably their weak point is that they're not able to explain those same things in 7 minutes or in 8 minutes or how much time you have. So building that up simultaneously is also important. You must have the ability to put your thoughts into words. And that's why I think Indian debaters slightly struggle with as compared to let's some debaters coming from countries where English is their first language. Because I think they start thinking in English. Once you think in English, you're able to speak in English very, very easily. There's quite a link. Versus us thinking in Hindi or thinking in our regional language and then translating it into English is something which is of a challenge. If you're a school debater working on these couple of things, I mean, you'll have far of a head start than we did if you're able to find this balance quite early on.
Which language do both of you all think in? And of course, then Katie can add to that. But I just wanted to know which language is sort of your mother tongues. If you all have to think in it, because for me, I'm sort of in this scope where I'm very comfortable with Hindi, but I probably think in English more. Like, that's my understanding of things. Like I wake
Yeah.
up and my first thought is in English. Let's say. Yeah,
I think for us it's Hindi. I think both
yeah, I
of
think
us.
for both of us, it's
fair
Hindi.
enough.
Our prep also happens in Hindi itself. So I think at least some
Fair
parts
enough.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, English essentially.
English.
Yeah. Yes, Katie.
Yeah, so I think just adding on to Sej's answer, my answer is also going to sound a bit typical. I think you just have to put yourself out there consistently. You just have to do a lot of competitions, especially even if you're not seeing a lot of success. I think this is a major deterrent for a lot of people. They go to 2 to 3 tournaments, especially like as young debaters. They don't see a lot of success, then they just think this is not for me, and they tend to opt out. I think this is something that you have to particularly just change your perspective at the way that you look at your performance in tournaments, especially at the start. So yeah, I just think it's very, very important. Like, you don't have to do every single like tournament weekly, but just doing at least one tournament every single month is something which is particularly useful. Even if you don't get any sort of success in your first 6 months, first 1 year, I think just being able to consistently do it and being disciplined in that manner is going to ensure that you also build your confidence up. So this is something me and Sej also did. In our first few months, we just didn't get a lot of success. But after just continuously doing a lot of competitions, the success came later, but the confidence came earlier, and that's something which is very, very important. So,
I love that. I think I also take away from this like a political exercise in some sense when it comes to let's say socio-political exercise when it comes to how citizens feel or like people feel in the country. And I'd like to know your thoughts on this because I noticed Sahed, you mentioned people who are far more knowledgeable or let's say who have a decent amount of experience, whether it be personally through their own academic lives. Imagine being from India and losing an Indian motion, right? That kind of a moment
Yeah.
against a foreigner. So, but when you can't express your ideas and thoughts very clearly, there's a certain amount of resentment which comes because you feel like you're smarter than the other person, but they just sort of spoke their way through and they won. And
Correct.
on a social political scale, maybe expression is really, really good if it's going to reduce that resentment and whatever else. But I also wanted to jump on this fact that you spoke about it. Okay, Indians maybe have this problem more specifically when it comes to expressing themselves because generally I've seen this trend that Indian debaters tend to be better at oration even if they're not better at the language of English itself, right? Compared to
Hmm.
other countries. One of the reasons being
Yeah.
India is a bit more emotional as a country, so we do rely on even within India. Let's say the person who's not so emotional in his speech is probably more emotional, I would say, on average than the average foreign speaker. That's what I've
Yeah.
noticed, right? Because there is a tendency for Indians to be a bit dramatic and a bit more emotional. So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it still holds up true? Because it's been a while since I've sort of, although I live in this country, been a while since I've looked at the thoughts of some people. Y'all are fresh eyes in that sense, right? Since all of are currently in Bulgaria against the top debaters in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it's true to say that a lot of the average Indian debaters are probably a lot more expressive in terms of sometimes the emotion, sometimes just the exaggeration of movement, stuff like
Yeah.
that, as compared to some speakers. But what I still feel is that even if you're able to express emotively what you're feeling or what your argument really entails, as you said, the problem lies in the way you're able to explain that. So a lot of times when I've spoken to debaters, and I recently, I judged a tournament, and when I go and speak to people, and I tell them, can you explain your case to me now? Like, now the debate is done. Try and explain to me what you wanted to argue. And often what they wanted to argue was far more smarter than what they actually did. And I realized that and that's something which honestly we also struggled with. Often when I should tell a judge our case later on, this is what we had in mind. Like, yeah, that makes sense, but I didn't understand that. And you're like, okay, fair. That means it's not the ideas that are lacking, or it's not that I'm not emotive enough, but it's the fact that I have to find some way and some rhythm of using that emotion to actually send the right message. And that's the balance which I had to strike in the first 1 year of debating as well. That what is this balance of actual correct content with the emotion I want to push into you. So that is something I think we do struggle at more as compared to other speakers, even if we are more emotive to start with. I don't think the balance is something we're able to crack. But I mean, we still have ample examples in our country of very, very good rhetorical and very good speakers that way. So I think it's not the lack of that, but just the balance which is slightly tricky for us.
Would you say that the like Indians just generally have one more step to cross when it comes to good oratory, which is not just like how you emote or how you speak and stuff like that, but also the concept of there is a there is this urge or tendency for speakers to, even after having great ideas and great arguments, wanting the arguments to sound smart. So there's a difference between being smart and sounding smart, which causes a hurdle. Or do you think that's uniquely Indian, particularly?
I think it is. So I think I'm not sure if it's only Indian, but as an Indian, I can definitely say it's an issue we do have, because
Okay.
if you go back to Ilya's advice about doing the basics, I also saw this in a lot of very good European speakers and a lot of good speakers we faced also. I think one example that simply comes to my mind is a lot of Eastern European speakers like Alec and Galina, who eventually reached the finals, who were the home team this year. I mean, one of the best like rhetorical speakers I've seen recently. They were outstanding. Like, I remember seeing their semis and we were spectating, and we felt moved. Like after their speeches, we were like, okay, they've done something, they've shaken us up. But if I go back and actually remember what they said, it was actually very simple things. It was just simple things, but done in a very effective manner. So the simple, make it simple, and Ilya's advice to us, keep your argument simple. That makes sense because the only things which across, societies and across like maybe an Indian debating circuit and a European debating circuit, what's common is the basics. So nobody can tell me that people not feeling good is not an impact. It's an impact in India and it's an impact in Europe as well. Maybe the jargon we use might be different, but if you keep it simple, then your emotions come out in the correct way, which I think they're able to do in specifically very, very good ways. And I have not seen speakers like that come in our country right now. But I think there's an urge to push a lot of content, and I've seen a lot of Eastern European speakers and European speakers maybe as well. They push a lot less. Like it's not about the number of points they're able to put, but the amount they want to make it very clear. Versus in our side, I think there's this confusion where we are not sure whether we should have push out a lot of more content or whether it's like less but critical. But the advice we were given was if you're in closing, we used to run too many things. So the advice we had was run less. So I think these things cause an issue, but I think emotively we can be there if we just somehow find this way out.
you know, and now I want to ask this question to KD, and you've gone. I'll go KD first because I've asked you two questions back to back sales. I want to speak about the finals which has happened. I know that unfortunately both of you all couldn't make it there, but when it comes to, of course, whether it be Jack or Uday or everybody else in that finals, the motion was very interesting. It was, I think, when it comes to artificial intelligence. So I have like a two-pronged question to you guys. Number one, what were your thoughts on the motion when you all heard it? What did you all think of when the debate was going on? And do you guys use AI to prepare? I think that's something which the next generation of debaters should probably know. So, KD,
Yeah, definitely. I think just picking the second part of your question earlier, using AI just to become better in terms of quality is something that we actually did include in our preparation as well. Again, the way that you use it is very important because so what you want to do is be very specific in the prompts that you're asking. For example, if it's international relations, what you want to know, what you want to get out of it. Uh, Presumably, what you can do is you can try to make specific prompts around, let's say, give me likelihood analysis why Russia is in a good position in terms of the war with Ukraine. Then simultaneously ask the counter question, give likelihood analysis why you think Russia is actually losing the war. Or just another prompt, why Republicans are going to win the midterms, why Democrats are going to win the midterms, right? What then you get after that is a lot of mechanisms. Then it's your job to look at their quality in terms of what is actually usable in the debate room, because a lot of like when you use these chat gpt deepseek, a lot of what you're going to get is not going to be that important. It might be slightly irrelevant, might not be cross applicable in debate room. So it's very important that you might just ask the right questions, but you have to be able to identify what's something that you can actually use as a mechanism in a debate room. So I think AI and using AI to prepare and understand good quality mechs, even first principle mechs, is something that can be done, that should be done, but being very careful in the identification of what can be a good quality mech. And I think second thing which is also important is being really sure in how you want to use it with a particular motion, because even if you get good generic quality mechs, every single debate is different, which means you have to use it in a manner that's very very contextual, right? You have to use it like so just inherence, which means the mechanism that you have should correlate with the actual motion at hand. It shouldn't be just a general mechanism that's applicable in a random debate. You have to ensure that it's relevant in the debate room in the motion that you specifically get. But I think there's definitely a place for using AI to just train better and understand the quality of mix that you're running. I think secondarily, in terms of my specific thoughts on finals motions in general, I think like definitely it's a good motion. It's a relevant motion as well. I, I I definitely think like there's a lot of extensions to be done on that motion. So it's a good motion from that perspective as well. Whether AI can be a good companion, whether you should use AI to take your decisions simultaneously, or whether AI can be manipulative, whether it can be used to coerce you. I think that's just a very good clash. That's just a very relevant clash. So I thought the motion was definitely a good set for finals. So
Sahed.
Yeah, I mean, AI was a big part of our prep, and I have no, qualms about accepting it that we did, because I think there's also this sort of course, what I've realized is you just can't use AI to in prep in an actual competition. Even if you do
Yeah.
it by you cheat, you just can't. Like it's this is not possible.
Yeah.
We try to talk about it, and there's this negative connotation about using it for prep in general. Like, oh, AI can't give you debate argument. And as Dhruv said, it probably can't give you argument, but it can give you content to filter out of. And the amount of content which you probably will take a lot more time to. So it's nothing but just a simulation of content in one area, which is one space you can use prep in. Like, you need to know five different things, but you need to know it right now. I don't want to spend 10, 20 minutes on it. That's the volume of content you can get in less time is where it helps you specifically, which we did a lot. IR prep, I think it helped quite a lot. But yeah, I think rest of the things I agree with him. But on finals, I think I just know there's one very crucial thing was, and this is why I think Jack as a speaker is something which is I just really really like because he also goes PM. I also go PM as well. When I hear Jack's speeches and specifically at PM, they are just incredibly clear. Like I have not seen speakers have that much content clarity in 7.5 minutes. Like I've just never seen it. And when you hear it, it's not that Jack is going a lot. He's going very very quick, or he's want covering a lot of content. He eventually does cover a lot of content, but it's often in a very specific manner. And in that motion specifically, I think what eventually won them the debate was a large part of the framing which came at Jack,
Yeah.
which at the end of the debate, I remember we were discussing, even I slightly forgot. Even I was like, maybe I'm not sure where OG stands, I'm not too sure. But when you keep recalling, and if I had my sheets, I mean, the amount of analysis which came at PM, people just eventually forgot about it. And that's what happened at OG. A good PM can win debates. And that's one thing I think apart from the motion, which I agree with, although it's very relevant. But just that speech, if anybody
Yeah.
watches, that's a very good starting point to know what a good content clarity speech looks like. Just what is a good structure? How can you ease into a speech? You don't have to be very, very, nervous about the quickness of your speech or how much can you cover. Ease into it, and that's a very good example of that, which I'm a huge fan of. I think.
I think it's so funny that Jack is a genuine dino in terms of how tall he is as well.
Yeah.
It was so funny, I think, while watching the recording, for the mic to go that far up. And I think one of the things that Jack had to say was it would be really embarrassing for the next speaker when the mic goes down.
It goes down.
And it like sort of directly sort of breaks the ice essentially over there. It's really funny. But 100%. So it's good to see both of them. Firstly, AI positive, as you mentioned, there's a certain norm in the industry right now where people are saying. I think firstly, my honest assumption, I think everybody's using it. I'm gonna
Of
say it as
course.
it is. I think it's so hard not to use AI just generally in your day to day right now. Even the ones who are saying they aren't using it for research, I think they, without maybe the starting point for research still is AI, or there are
Mhm.
basic doubts, is still gonna go back to AI, right?
Exactly.
So I feel like it's one of those things which happen maybe in perhaps Indian classrooms more than others, where you tell others you're not studying but you are for your
Yeah.
exam. Like, that little tendency people have, and I think that's what's happening. But I think there's also this second thing which I feel, which is for somebody to say it just won't help, like with that much certainty,
Yeah.
almost seems like an anti-debater thing to say, at least to
Exactly.
me,
Yeah.
right? Like, how can you be that certain when firstly it's evolving, and secondly you've not even put in the effort to see how it can be optimized for debate. So that is my personal thoughts on it. Whenever I hear these kind of things, it's really good to see that you both were like AI positive about this, and regardless of how you all use it, the amount you use is also a personal decision. You can be
Yeah.
the best debater in, but is it for you? Is another question you have to sort of
Right.
answer personally. But definitely there are ways one can sort of inculcate AI into their practice. With that, I come to the question: like, what do you think is the biggest challenge? And I'm sure I'll keep this short. I know it's getting really, really late in India, but
Yeah.
uh, what do you think is the biggest challenge, perhaps, in the Indian debating circuit right now? Is it accessibility? That's something people have spoken about a lot. Do you think, and this is my second thing, which is honestly an opinion, I feel like debate is such a thing which can be extremely popular. I almost get like furious when I get to know like that debate is one of the more underfunded sports,
Yeah.
not only in the country but in the world. And I feel like everybody likes debating. So what is it that keeps us as a sport like right now? Theoretically, you all should get the same amount of recognition that Indian team doing the World Cup is doing, if I have to say, it's still exaggerated, right? I know cricket is like India's first love, but ladai karna is second, at least in Delhi,
Yeah.
right? So I don't get it, and I would like to hear from you guys, perhaps. What do you think is missing? What are the challenges in growing the sport, and not just growing the sport in quality wise, but in quantity wise, and making it popular? What are those things, and if you all have solutions as well, solutions?
Yeah. So I think just firstly, accessibility is definitely a big deterrent for a lot of universities. A lot of college students just don't get that sort of institutional support in terms of being able to participate in tournaments, not even just international tournaments, but even regional competitions in other areas. So from the North Circuit to the South Circuit, they just don't get a lot of institutional support in terms of funding. So I think accessibility for the majority of students is definitely very a big deterrent. Generally, only the major societies of major colleges in India actually get that institutional support, and even they don't get like you could also argue that the support that they also get is not sufficient enough for them to actually get that sort of accessibility and be able to participate in general. I think secondarily, there's also a big problem of WGM representation within the circuit as well. So not just representation for every single student, but I think our circuit, in terms of how it operates, in terms of the environment that's being created, I think it's still not inclusive enough for WGM debaters, WGM societies, WGM universities. So I think there's still just a long way for us to go there in general. There can be a lot of factors within this, just in terms of the environment that's even created in a debate room, and how whether that's inclusive, whether that's toxic. So I think there's a lot of stuff and a lot of work that needs to be done. I think funding can solve in terms of the institutional support, but I think just creating an environment where a lot more people, especially from like gender minorities, feel included is something that we need to do more work on definitely. So,
Was it gender minority or general minorities?
gender minority.
Gender minorities. Fair enough. Okay. Yes, Sahed.
I think for me, I think the one very straight contrast with a lot of other countries which do very well in debate is we have to start at the school level. Like, I think it's just unfortunate a lot of people get introduced to the idea of debate. I mean, even me, although I debated in school, the idea of parliamentary debating, which is of course the most common format in the other universities worldwide, I got introduced to way late. Like, I think we need to start at a level where students take up debate as an activity, which is an alternative to a lot of the other activities already exist. I think if you can increase the popularity at that level, when parents come to know this is a legitimate option, I mean, the classic thing, right? When dances and theater became slightly more popular only when we had students doing it at a larger scale. So we need to have some avenues of doing that. But I think the second is make it a little less privileged as an activity. I mean, slightly, with regards to what Drew said. But I mean, both of us also have to acknowledge today that we are very privileged. I mean,
Yeah.
we had the opportunity and the money to do a lot of the comps in India. We had the ability to get some money from debate and use that to pay for our coaching. We paid for our flights to Sofia. All these things make a difference. So it's of course our privilege that allowed us to do that, and we have to make sure there are some ways to reduce that gap for other teams. And I think one classic example of that was last year's AVP, right? We had 16 teams going from India only because there was an active effort from the seniors to have a fundraiser, possibly have more and more support for visas, push teams to say that, apply for these fundraisers, get the avenues you require, and then go for it. Because whether you accept it or not, it's an expensive activity if you have to go to good tournaments. So we have to bridge the gap monetarily. We can't have teams not being able to go simply because they're good, but they don't have the money for it. So that gap has to be, I think, it has to be less, and we have to have more volume of teams going from India to these competitions. That will help us not be the exceptions, right? Because as happy as me and Drew were at the announcement of our breaks, I remember Sai saying to me that for the last 3 years I've been waiting to see an Indian team so that other people know that Indian team. As much as we really like that we were the team to do that, we don't want to have another 4 or 5 years for the other team to come up. I
Yeah.
think it has to happen every year. We must have teams breaking in the open category becoming a very regular thing. For that, we just must start early, and we must somewhere just psychologically make this a less privileged activity. We have to have more people coming in.
Yeah. And you know, now I'm sort of I became reflective for a second over there when it came to different journeys people have in India. I often get texts from people. So just last week I was getting a text from this girl in Kashmir who was telling me that she doesn't have the funds essentially to do any of these debates, but she'd like to get sponsored and stuff like that. And it's an unfortunate reality that we have people who want to participate. And my honest belief is that debate could be India's number one intellectual sport. And I would argue it's
Yeah.
more natural to our upbringing than even something like a chess, where people like Gukesh are making India proud,
Yeah.
right? And it's sort of there. And this is where, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this as well. So I think of, now there are two kinds of debates which happen in my brain. One is when I'm arguing, let's say, of course, in a structured debate environment like a parliamentary debate, right? Or when I'm arguing on the streets. Why I'm arguing on the streets is debatable itself, but regardless, when I'm talking to somebody else, it's an average Joe conversation, or something like that, in my friends or in office or something like that. And something which I've always realized is there has been a TikTokization, let's say, of debates as well, where I need to get my point covered in 15 seconds or 20 seconds. Otherwise, the other people like disengage, like intellectually disengage, even if they're listening. And especially if they're not involved in this, like in debate. Like if they, maybe if I'm arguing with you guys about something, even as something like, okay, where do we want to get a hotel, right?
Mm.
If that's a general like decision-making argument we come into, there's a longer engagement we might have as people who've debated in the past than these like than the average person who's debated a bit but not really, right? And I assume for the grassroots level to sort of get involved in debate, especially people who don't have, I've never seen around them like a role model in debating and something like that's always how it starts. There has to be some aspiration attached to it, where you see somebody else do really well in life maybe because of their debating skills. And I don't know whether like parliamentary formats or like these formats are like a hurdle. With they're almost not a, there's no TikTokization of a BP debate,
Yeah.
right? There isn't. So like, maybe a conventional debate essentially is like perhaps easier to get involved with, where there aren't so many mechanizations, structures, formats. But what do you all think is like, perhaps the easiest way for people to like, sort of get into debate number one, and then perhaps get into the parliamentary debate? And do you think what I'm saying has some sort of logic to it, or do you all think that isn't relevant at the moment?
I think I have just two things. I think one, I think absolutely conventional debates are the starting point because as a fifth grader, the easiest thing for me to understand was that this is the topic. We'll study this, we'll research this, we write a speech on it. You prepare the speech, you understand the speech, and you deliver it. That's the first starting point for me to understand. Okay, I am speaking against, for get a basic idea of how things work. Uh, I think, and this is something I'm seeing an increase of. I mean, even in my time, I did have this option. So this is something that I'm seeing this existing as a norm. But I also do think we need to get parliamentary debating also slightly early. And the reason I say that is because you're right. These things are very jargonish when you think about it. Like, what is this mechanization? What is this weighing? And all these things mean. And if it's a hurdle for somebody like me who's already debated, I'm sure it's a hurdle for somebody who's never debated before, right? But I think the way to solve it is also as a sixth grader who wants to debate or who's done 1 year of conventional debating, if it was taught to me then, probably the first couple of years it'll take time, right, to absorb. Maybe I come from a very privileged background. Somebody else will may take more time to understand it. But by the time they come to a level where they can think of competitively debating, or at least being more included in the activity, they probably know a lot more of it. And this is true, I think, in Malaysia and Singapore and all a lot of these countries who are doing exceptionally well in debates, even Philippines. A lot of them have this curriculum at the very starting point. Like they have parliamentary debating in school. So, and you've seen the translation of that, that when speakers from them come into like worlds, they don't have 2 years of experience like us. They have 5, 10 years of experience of parliamentary debating. So that makes them a little more comfortable at the bigger stages. So I think both having a starting point and then getting this included at an early stage can help to ease into the format.
KD?
Yeah, I think so. Just definitely adding on to Sehaj's answer here, starting early is a very important factor because the familiarity that you have with the format is useful in you developing that attention span as well. A lot of students just don't have that attention span. They like of again the reels, social media, Instagram. A lot of that's the reason that just people in general don't have that attention span. I think just including this format, parliamentary format, where you have to sit and actively listen to someone speak for 7 minutes and then go ahead and also speak for 7 minutes. I think that's also good for students who are young, who are still impressionable. So it's very, very important to start early. But I think secondarily, there's also an entertainment factor that's specific to parliamentary format that I think isn't fully weaponized in terms of marketing as well. I think the specific entertainment potential is the fact that you get the motion right there and then. You just have 15 minutes to prepare. And every single argument that you're thinking about, you have just instantly thought about it on your feet. In a lot of conventional debates that you get topics very, very early, like you get weeks, like days to prepare for it. I think there's something that's inherently more entertaining when you just know that the person thought about the argument, thought about the rebuttal right there and then, versus them getting, let's say, 2 to 3 days to prepare for it. So I think just this realization among the masses that what you are seeing right now, they only had 15 minutes to prepare for, is, I think, if that awareness is something that's fully utilized, I think the degree with which you'll value the content that's being generated is going to be higher. The degree with which you'll value Jack's story speech is also going to be higher when you just know that it's 15 minutes time that they got the motion. So I think just awareness in what this format is and what this format requires can also mean that people appreciate the content that's being generated, the speeches that are being generated. Maybe it's also important just to TikTokify this also, right? have good tin rebuttals, have good Cato rebuttals, come on your feet regularly. I think that's something we can also do. But I think there's a lot of entertainment scope here that's not being fully utilized. So yeah.
Fair enough. I think that sort of summarizes everything that we had to, you know. And I really appreciate all of you guys' time. I think we've taken a good 1.5 hours of our conversation over here to get this right. So thank you so much for joining me, guys.
Thank you. Thank you
And
so much.
it's
Thank you
been a
so
pleasure
much.
speaking to you guys. Hopefully, we speak again after Ottawa, where both of your teams, both of you all come together for a team and sort of make India proud again. So, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And as people say in debates at the end, proud to interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.